I think we'll start off with this story from East Wall in Dublin, Padraig, of busloads of what's been described as asylum seekers, or by others as economic migrants, mainly male, mainly young and middle-aged, been bussed into East Wall in Dublin, and the reaction of the community over the last few days and nights, where there have been serious protests. Before we do, I'm just going to show you the one of the videos that went viral on Sunday, and which has brought about these protests in the community in East Wall in Dublin.
I'm a resident here. I want to know what's going on. What's your name?
What's something to do with me?
I'm asking you a question though. What's going on here? Yeah, but this is an office block. This is an apartment or a hotel.
It's the government. This is the government doing this.
But
all young, healthy men being bussed in. We've been told that asylum-seeking families are fleeing war and coming to Ireland, particularly from Ukraine, and that we need to open up our hearts. Is there a limit to these things, Paul? You want to run with this story anyway, so we have another couple of videos to show about protests that have happened over the last few nights in East Wall, or demonstrations. But before that, Padraig, and what is your take on the bussing in of these migrants without any consultation, first of all, or asylum seekers, depending on your view, and the reaction of the community there?
If you believe in democracy, you would believe local democracy should function. There should be people in the area should, like you hear the word consulted. They should have an input into the development of their own area. I think in a wider scheme, democratically, like the country's governed, and we have foreign policies, and we have agreements that we have signed up to take people in who are fleeing war, humanitarian aid, stuff like this. But like it should never be pushed in on top of communities. Like it as I've put to you a number of weeks, Finbar, my view is the Irish government is, whether they're doing it on purpose or not, they are creating the conditions for the growth of the far right in Ireland. So this is another example of it. So if the question is there a limit? Well, every society manages their affairs in a way which it should be done based on your means. So yeah, like I mean, that goes without saying that these things should be managed to some degree. Like it shouldn't be just taken that you can force things where you don't have provision for them, you know.
And we are being told, you know, our emotional strings up in Poland, we've been told that all of these people are fleeing wars, that they are seeking asylum. They're not economic migrants. And yet I meet a lot of these people after being here a few years, and they all open up and they tell me honestly that they came here for economic reasons, that they weren't fleeing anything, that they told lies. They told the lies that they had to tell to come here. They lied about where they came from. I know people from Pakistan who claim to be from Iran. I know people from Nigeria who claim to be from Zimbabwe. And so, you know, they will tell you then that themselves. And in fact, I have spoken to a number of African couples over the last few weeks who have told me that they are in a state of shock at the level of immigration into Ireland over the last year, and especially over the last 6 to 7 months, and the impact that will have on our society, on our economy, and on our services. And that's coming from people who have benefited from coming here themselves as economic migrants and claimed to be something else when they were coming here to get in here. So from the surface right down to the depths, there's a dishonesty and a secrecy and a treating communities as though they have to be the last to know, that they have to be fooled into accepting whatever is going on here. Personally, I think there's advantage being taken. It's about the workforce. It's about getting as many young people to replace low-paid workers, to stop Irish and current low-paid workers from demanding higher wages in a time of inflation. I think that's a big part of what's going on. So this is about economics to me, and that we are using populations to satisfy our economic needs, but not our economic needs, your or my economic needs, but the economic needs of big businessmen in this country and outside of this country, who will use cheap labor And that's what this is about, as far as I'm concerned. Cheap labor. It's not about saving people from war zones or anything else. As far as I can see, that's my take on things. And this lack of consultation, the whole thing is stinks of secrecy, stinks of a complete disrespect for the Irish electorate and the community. And then this labelling of anybody who questions what's going on as far right, as racist, as extremist. I personally have no regard for anyone or anything that believes that one human being is intrinsically better or worse because of their birth or because of their race or anything to do with them genetically. I abhor any such concepts. So that's not what this is about for me and so many other people. But our lack of consultation, our lack of discussion on this, and the fact that our services are bending. We can't house our own at the moment. And yet it would seem suddenly we can give anything and everything to people who've just arrived here. But we can't do that for people who've been homeless or who've needed other services, such as medical services, for years and years. You can understand people getting annoyed. I'm getting annoyed. We have a few videos here we're going to show from the protests over the last few nights. It doesn't look to me like a gang of far-right protesters or a mob of thugs. It looks to me like genuine people from the community who have concerns.
My name is 𝐄𝐚𝐬𝐭 and I'm a local resident, and I just want to tell people that have come here tonight about East Wall. East Wall is a multicultural neighbourhood. The mayor of East Wall is a Muslim and his name is Mohammed. We all voted for him. The owner of the chipper is a gentleman called Yanni. He's a friend of mine. He's an Albanian. The shop on Church Road is owned by Tina.
So that was some of the organisers making it clear that it wasn't about race, or isn't about race, but rather it's about lack of consultation. Here's the man he referred to as Maliki, who is a well-known left-wing figure in the area in East Wall.
In support of the 300 residents who were here on Saturday protesting, and a spontaneous event which, you know, was arranged by a few people over social media. I've lived in this area all my life. My grandparents moved here in 1917 and my mother was reared here for her nearly 90 years before she passed away. And I'm here today, and I was here on Saturday, to support the people in saying that you cannot impose a facility for 600 mainly male asylum seekers without any discussion or consultation with the people. And there has been no, despite the statement from the government this evening, where they say that they're in talks and in consultation with the residents, there has been no consultation with any TD or senior minister.
Okay, so that was Maliki Steenson. Taking a wider view of this, Padraig, not a countrywide view of it, there does seem to be a serious growing problem. We had issues down in Mayo and other places as well, where hotels and things like that. Let me just start that again. We've had situations down in Mayo and other places where very local communities, Kilkenny, very small communities, have had their populations increase massively overnight by the intake or influx of mainly young male asylum seekers who nobody has any information about them, where they come from, what their intentions are. They're asylum seekers, so they haven't been processed yet. So nobody knows whether they're criminals or who they are from whatever part of the world either. And that's a concern that some people have. I'm sure most of them are just coming to try to make a new life for themselves. But we just don't know who these people are that are coming in and that have been putting into these small communities. So I think I can understand people's concerns anyway. Micheál Martin has also conceded, who's the current Taoiseach of Ireland, he's also conceded that communities should be consulted. There's a raft of headlines here. Do you want to go through them, Padraig?
Yeah, Finbar, I'm just going to read you an excerpt out of an article that was in the Journal, and it's with Gary Gannon from the Social Democrats. So fringe elements of the far right are whipping up hysteria in East Wall in Dublin, which has seen 2 protests in recent days over the housing of asylum seekers in the area, according to Dublin Central TD Gary Gannon. Mr. Gannon told today with Claire Bourne on RT Radio 1 that anger and fear about the housing and cost of living crisis is being misplaced and sent in the wrong direction. This is not something that is reflective of the North Inner City community as a whole. this has been whipped up. Fringe elements of the far right are making people have a sense of fear of the unknown. I think that is what manifested itself last night and on Saturday. I don't want to see those scenes again. People have a right to seek international protection in this country. They are here seeking sanctuary and refuge, and we have an obligation to meet that. He strongly condemned protesters whom he stated used the phrase out, out, out when protesting outside the old ESB building in his constituency. Mr. Gannon said the people of East Wall should have been informed about the change of use of that building. So, Finbar, that's a little bit of a different narrative than what you were able to show there in some of the videos, which is a little bit more of the focusing on the negative of this. Now, anybody that was there of any sense seemed to be talking about consultation, which seemed like a very reasonable position. I looked at a good bit of the video on this, and I can say that there were some elements there. I can see that there were some elements there that were trying to influence the crowd. And this is the very thing we've been talking about for weeks, that the conditions are now there. When you bring people in, there's no consultation. It seems like people from outside of the country are getting treated better. It seems that way. Well, then this gives rise to a growth of this sentiment, and it can grow very quickly and grow very ugly. It's worth pointing out as well that within the country we have different ethnic communities that are represented here as refugees and migrants, and some are treated better than others. So if you speak in terms of, let's say, direct provision centres where there may have been a lot of African refugees housed, they're not being treated in the same way that, say, Ukrainian refugees are being treated in. And obviously then there's the image then of how people who have been born generationally in Ireland are being treated as well. So this is something that I didn't think it would come to a head as quick as it did from when we were speculating in the last few weeks, but here it is.
It's not going away. I have to say, I fully understand people's annoyance, because there almost seems to be a policy now of massively increasing, or every step that the government take seems to be to massively increase the number of what are, in my mind, mainly economic migrants coming into this country, but not using the correct processes to do so. So the Minister for Justice, McEntee, recently introduced legislation into the Dáil, which facilitates the undocumented migrants in this country, economic migrants or refugees, whatever you want to call them, undocumented from other countries, to become documented and legalised in Ireland. This has resulted in a massive influx of undocumented from the UK into Ireland to become documented, to become citizens in this country. Massive, massive influx. The stupidity of it, unless it was actually your intention in the first place. And again, I keep on coming back that ultimately, when the bigwigs plan and organise and arrange the mass movement of populations from one area in the globe to another, it's been done for economic reasons. Whether years ago it was a movement of slaves, now what we do, we destroy third world countries, we destroy their economies, and then we take their youth and their brains into our country as cheap labour. We've been doing it for thousands of years. We continue to do it. And that's what I believe this is a part of a process of. But we cannot afford to do it. As far as I'm concerned, we can't afford to house these people. And the anger and the sentiment of anger that is there is also fomented, justifiably to a degree, by the fact that it doesn't just appear. It is a fact that there are people who are just coming to our shores, who are economic migrants, clearly economic migrants, who are jumping the queue when it comes to accessing services compared to people who've lived in this country all their lives. That's a fact of the matter. I'm presented with evidence of it every single day. And on that basis, I can understand people getting angry. But we need to be angry at the policy makers. That's who we need to be angry about. Because your man Gannon, he lives in his community. He's a representative for his community in the parliament. He, I no doubt, knows what was going on. He probably knew that they were coming into his community and said nothing. But rather than accept the responsibility for not communicating with his community, he starts pointing fingers and accuses everybody who has any questions of being far right. And all of those politicians that I've watched and listened to over the last 24 to 48 hours pointing the far right finger are all politicians who are a part of this problem and are not willing to name it for what it is. That's my mind on it. We'll move on because we could go on all day. And again, I have no doubt that I will be labelled far right after saying what I've just said, but I can assure you that I'm not far right. If we understand far right to mean believing in the conservative value that whites or that Europeans are in some way better than other races or other groupings of people, if that's what you mean by far right, I'm certainly not far right, but I am sensible and I am reasonable, and I do try to see the wood for the trees.
Finbar,
Okay.
just to finish on it, it's worth pointing out as well that the icon of the left, Karl Marx himself wrote in his time about his observations while he was exiled in England about the influx of Irish immigrants coming into the labour market in England, and how you had two elements of the proletariat warring with each other and making their masters rich as such, like, you know. So here's an icon of the left, and these were the observations he had. So like things can't be just classified as left and right. You have to look at them in their own right.
And you know, the bosses and the rich and the uber rich are rubbing their hands together in this country and elsewhere with an influx of economic migrants, whether they're going through the asylum process or not, because it means they get money for their buildings. They get money for services that they provide in there. They get low wage workers into the future. So it's quids in for the rich and the wealthy. And I wonder to myself, if Ireland has enough workers, doesn't have enough workers, well, maybe we have enough work. Maybe this idea that we have to constantly be swelling ourselves in terms of our workload, maybe we have enough work. Maybe that's the solution. Maybe we should be happy with what we have. But there's certain greedy, business-driven, conglomerate-driven entities in this country that just want us to consume, and to expand their wealth more and more. Maybe we don't need to increase our workforce that much more. Maybe we need to stop producing crap and crap services, and we need to focus our workforce more into providing services and things like that, and paying people who provide services properly, such as care workers in our community and things like that, and valuing them and allowing them to drive the economy rather than these guys who just want to import low-paid workers. We'll move on.